Maybe you just need to identify your gift so you can quit tripping in your own life, trying to figure out what you can do.
Hollywood is all about image. And sometimes that image includes a full head of hair, even when it's not real. While confidence is key, a few actors chose to keep their hair secrets under wraps, literally. From flawless hairlines to dramatic styles, here are 20 black actors who were secretly bald but wore wigs like pros. 1. Samuel Leroy Jackson.
Hamburgers, cornerstone of any nutritious breakfast.
Sam Jackson has been rocking the bald look for years now, and honestly, it suits him perfectly. But back in his earlier days, he was all about those wigs and toupees. The man who would later become famous for yelling, "I've had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane." In Snakes on a Plane, actually spent a good chunk of his career hiding his hairline. In movies like Jungle Fever and Goodfellas, Jackson sported various hairstyles that weren't exactly growing from his scalp. He was particularly creative with his hair choices in Spike Lee films, where he often played characters with wild, unkempt hair that looked completely natural. The funny thing is, Jackson was so good at wearing these pieces that nobody really questioned whether it was his real hair or not. What's interesting about Jackson is that he didn't gradually transition to being bald on screen. One day, he just decided to embrace the chrome dome, and it became his signature look. Now, when you see him in movies like Snakes on a Plane or the Marvel films as Nick Fury, that shiny bald head is as iconic as his intense stare and his ability to make any line sound cool. Jackson once joked in interviews that going bald was the best thing that happened to his career because it saved him time in the makeup chair. No more worrying about whether his hairpiece was sitting right or if it might slip during an action sequence. Just shine it up and go. 2. James Earl Jones.
I'll say this only once. A team is not a team if you don't give a damn about one another.
The voice of Darth Vader himself, James Earl Jones, was secretly battling hair loss for decades while building his legendary career. This is a man whose voice could make reading the phone book sound dramatic, but his hair situation was a bit more complicated than his vocal cords. Jones wore hairpieces for many of his stage and screen performances, particularly during his younger years, when leading men were expected to have full heads of hair. In movies like Conan the Barbarian, where he played the villain Thulsa Doom, his imposing presence was enhanced by various wigs and headpieces that made him look even more intimidating. What's fascinating about Jones is how he managed to maintain different hair looks for different roles without anyone being the wiser. On stage, performing Shakespeare, he could have a full head of curly hair. In movies, he might sport a completely different style. And in his voice work as Darth Vader, well, nobody could see his head anyway since it was covered by that iconic helmet. Jones was particularly skilled at choosing hairpieces that matched his age and the character he was playing. He never went for anything too flashy or unrealistic. Everything looked natural and age-appropriate, which is probably why so few people knew he was wearing anything artificial at all. The man who gave us the most famous "Luke, I am your father" line in The Empire Strikes Back was keeping his own hair secrets while delivering some of cinema's most memorable moments. Eventually, Jones embraced his natural look, and honestly, his distinguished appearance in later years proved that sometimes less really is more. 3. Cicely Tyson.
My name is Denzel Washington. I said, oh. I was supposed to know who he was.
The incomparable Cicely Tyson was a master of hair transformation long before it became trendy. This legendary actress, who graced our screens for decades, dealt with hair thinning but turned it into an art form with her wig game. Tyson was famous for her natural hair advocacy in the 1960s when she shocked Hollywood by wearing her hair in an afro. But as she aged, like many women, she experienced hair thinning and began incorporating wigs into her look. The amazing thing about Tyson was how she made each wig look like it was specifically designed for whatever character she was playing. In Root, her hair looked period appropriate and completely natural. In the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, she aged from a young woman to over 100 years old, and her hair transformations were part of what made her performance so believable. She could go from young and vibrant to elderly and wise, and her hair always told part of the story. Tyson often talked about how important it was for black women to see diverse representations of beauty on screen. Her various hairstyles throughout her career showed that there wasn't just one way for black women to wear their hair. She could rock short, natural styles, long flowing hair, or anything in between, and she always looked stunning. 4. Courtney Bernard Vance.
Did you try and contact this woman? Did you talk to anyone in the precinct? Did you go to Prospect Park?
Courtney Bernard Vance has been using hairpieces strategically throughout his career, and the man deserves an award for his consistency. Married to Angela Bassett, Vance has managed to maintain a youthful appearance in many of his roles through clever use of hair units. In The People 5 O.J. Simpson, where he played Johnny Cochran, Vance's hair was absolutely perfect. Every strand was in place, and he looked exactly like the real-life lawyer he was portraying. That kind of precision doesn't happen by accident, and it definitely wasn't his natural hair doing all that work. Vance has been particularly smart about matching his hairpieces to his characters' ages and social status. When he's playing a successful lawyer or businessman, his hair looks polished and professional. When he's playing more casual characters, the hair looks more relaxed and natural. It's like he has a whole wardrobe of hair to choose from. He's also smart about when to wear hairpieces and when to go natural. In some of his more recent roles, he has been spotted with his natural, thinner hair, showing that he's comfortable with both looks depending on what the role requires. 5. Sherman Hemsley.
Hey, she got a big sense of humor.
Anything's big to you. He's so short he has to stand on his toes to put his hat on.
Sherman Hemsley, our beloved George Jefferson from the Jeffersons, was moving on up in more ways than one, including his hair game. The man who made "We're Moving On Up" famous was actually dealing with hair loss later in his career, but wasn't about to let that stop him from looking sharp. During the height of the Jeffersons, Hemsley's hair looked full and perfectly styled for his character. George Jefferson was supposed to be a successful businessman who took pride in his appearance, so the hair had to match the attitude. What many fans didn't realize was that Hemsley was getting some artificial help to maintain that look. Hemsley was particularly good at choosing wigs that matched his personality. George Jefferson was loud, proud, and always ready to make a statement, and his hair reflected that confidence. It was never too perfect or too styled, but it always looked like it belonged on the head of a man who had made it big in the dry cleaning business. In later appearances and reunion shows, Hemsley continued to wear hairpieces that kept him looking like the George Jefferson fans remembered. He understood that part of his appeal was maintaining that iconic look, and he wasn't about to disappoint his audience by showing up looking completely different. 6. Steve Harvey.
Now, okay, Neil named her after one of the moons of Uranus.
Uranus, I think is how we...
Steve Harvey's hair journey is probably the most openly discussed on this list, mainly because Harvey himself has been pretty honest about it. The man who hosts Family Feud and gives relationship advice was keeping his own hair secrets for years before coming clean about his famous flat top. Back in his stand-up comedy days, Harvey was known for his perfectly maintained flat-top haircut. That hair was so iconic that it became part of his comedic persona. He would joke about getting haircuts and maintaining his look, all while wearing what he later admitted was a very convincing toupee. Harvey's wig game was so strong that when he finally revealed the truth, many people were genuinely shocked. His flat top looked so natural and so consistently perfect that nobody questioned whether it was real. He had found a style that worked with his face shape and comedy persona, and he stuck with it for years. The transition period when Harvey was deciding whether to keep wearing hairpieces or go bald was interesting to watch. You could see him experimenting with different looks on his various TV shows, trying to figure out what worked best for his evolving career. Now that Harvey has embraced the bald look, he's become just as iconic without hair as he was with it. His perfectly smooth head has become part of his brand, and he often jokes about his previous hair situation in his comedy routines. He has turned his hair journey into part of his comedic material, which is probably the best way to handle the situation. Harvey has also been open about the maintenance that went into keeping his hairpiece looking good. He has talked about the time, money, and effort it took to maintain that perfect flat top, and how liberating it was to finally let it go. 7. Anthony Anderson.
So Freddy Krueger done been up in here or something?
Oh, no, man. Freddy Krueger had 4 blades, man. That's only 3. That's Wolverine.
Anthony Anderson has been playing with different hair looks throughout his career, and like a true professional, he's made it work for whatever character he's portraying. From his early comedy days to his current role in Blackish, Anderson has shown that the right hairpiece can completely change your appearance. In movies like Barbershop, Anderson's hair looked completely natural and appropriate for his character. He was playing someone who worked in a barbershop, so his hair had to look convincing around all those real barbers and stylists. The fact that he pulled it off shows how good his hair game really was. Anderson has been particularly smart about using hairpieces that match his comedy style. When he's doing more physical comedy, his hair never looks too perfect or styled. It looks like it belongs to someone who might get into ridiculous situations, which is exactly what his characters often do. In Blackish, Anderson's hair looks professional and dad-like, which fits perfectly with his character of a successful advertising executive trying to maintain his cultural identity. The hair adds to his credibility as a family man and business professional. What's interesting about Anderson is how he has used different hair looks to signal different phases of his career. In his heavier days, he had one type of hairstyle. As he lost weight, his hair evolved too. It's like his hairpieces were part of his overall image transformation. Anderson has never made a big deal about his hair choices, which is probably the smartest approach. He just quietly uses what works for each role and keeps moving forward with his career. 8. Ernie Hudson.
I was so focused on being the guy, and you don't want to give up very much, because this is how you taught. And so now at this stage in life, I'm sort of wanting to know what it's like to be affectionate, so I know it's freaking her out.
Ernie Hudson, one of the original Ghostbusters, has been using wigs strategically throughout his career to maintain a fuller look for various roles. The man who asked, "If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call?" was keeping his own hair secrets while busting ghosts on screen. In Ghostbusters, Hudson's hair looked perfectly natural and appropriate for his character Winston Zeddemore. He was supposed to be the everyman of the group, and his hair helped sell that image. Nobody was questioning whether it was real because it looked so convincing and fit his character so well. Hudson has been particularly good at choosing hairpieces that don't draw attention to themselves. He has never gone for anything too flashy or obvious. His approach has always been to enhance his natural look rather than completely change it, which is probably why so few people noticed he was getting artificial help. Throughout his long career, Hudson has played everything from action heroes to dramatic characters, and his hair has always been appropriate for whatever role he was taking on. Whether he was fighting supernatural creatures or playing more serious, dramatic parts, his hair never distracted from his performance. Hudson has also been smart about transitioning between different looks as he has aged. He has never tried to look too young for his age, but he's also never let hair loss limit his roles or his confidence on screen. 9. Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry's hair situation is unique because he's famous for wearing wigs both in and out of drag. While everyone knows about his Medea wigs, fewer people realize that Perry has also used hairpieces for his regular male roles throughout his career. In movies where Perry plays serious dramatic roles, his hair often looks fuller and more styled than in his everyday public appearances. He's been smart about using different hair looks to distinguish between his various characters and personas. Perry's approach to wigs is refreshingly practical. He sees them as tools for character creation, whether he's playing Medea, a serious dramatic character, or anything in between. His experience with theatrical wigs for his female characters has probably made him more comfortable with using hairpieces for his male roles too. What's interesting about Perry is how he has used hair as part of his overall character development. When he's playing wealthy or successful characters, his hair looks polished and professional. When he's playing more down-to-earth characters, the hair looks more casual and natural. Perry has also been open about the practical benefits of using wigs and hairpieces. As a filmmaker, he understands that appearance is important for character believability, and he's willing to use whatever tools necessary to make his characters work. The man has built an entertainment empire partly by understanding what his audience wants to see, and that includes making sure his characters look the part, even if that means getting some artificial help with the hair situation. 10. LeVar Burton.
Hey, Troy. Hi, I'm LeVar Burton.
Pierce got LeVar Burton to come here for Troy? Is there anyone he can't produce?
Now I'm really getting mad. Why am I the only one he decided to torture?
LeVar Burton, our beloved host of Reading Rainbow, and Geordi LaForge from Star Trek. The Next Generation has used hair units during various periods of his career to maintain consistent looks for his characters. During his Reading Rainbow days, Burton's hair always looked perfect and professional, which was important for his role as an educational television host. Children and parents expected him to look polished and trustworthy, and his consistently good hair was part of that overall image. In Star Trek: The Next Generation, Burton's character Geordi wore a distinctive headpiece that covered his eyes, but his hair was still an important part of his overall look. The hair had to look futuristic and appropriate for a 24th century Starfleet officer, and Burton's hairpieces helped achieve that look. Burton has been particularly smart about maintaining consistency in his appearance across different projects. Whether he was encouraging children to read or exploring strange new worlds, his hair always looked appropriate for whatever he was doing. 11. Cuba Gooding, Jr.
I want to stay in Arizona. I want my new contract. But I like you. Yes, I like you, Jerry.
Cuba Gooding Jr. has been juggling hair loss while maintaining his leading man status for years, and honestly, the man deserves credit for his dedication to the craft. The Oscar winner who made us all want to show me the money in Jerry Maguire has been quietly using hairpieces to keep his on-screen image looking sharp. During his peak heartthrob years in the 1990s, Gooding Jr. always had perfectly styled hair that looked natural and effortless. Movies like Boys in the Hood showcased him with a full head of hair that fit perfectly with his character's youth and energy. What audiences didn't know was that some of that hair wasn't exactly homegrown. In A Few Good Men, where he played alongside Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, Gooding Jr.'s hair looked military appropriate, but still full enough to maintain his leading man appeal. The hairpiece work was so seamless that nobody questioned whether a young military officer would naturally have that kind of perfect hairline. Gooding Jr. has been particularly smart about adapting his hair choices to match his characters' backgrounds. In Radio, where he played a mentally challenged man, his hair looked more casual and less styled. In action movies like Snow Dogs, his hair had to look good enough for a family-friendly leading man, but realistic enough for someone dealing with sled dogs in Alaska. 12. LL, Cool J, Ladies Love.
Yes, yes, y'all. Feel a beat, y'all. Freak, freak, y'all. You don't stop.
Cool J, and part of that appeal has been his ability to reinvent his look for different roles, including strategic use of wigs when the situation called for it. The man who rapped "I Can't Live Without My Radio" has shown that he can't live without good hair options either. LL Cool J went bald relatively early in his career, But that didn't stop him from maintaining different looks for his various projects. When he transitioned from music to acting, he sometimes used hairpieces to create specific character looks that differed from his usual bald appearance. In movies like Deep Blue Sea, where he played a chef fighting off super-intelligent sharks, LL's hair looked natural and appropriate for someone working in a kitchen on a research facility. The hair had to look realistic enough that audiences could focus on the ridiculous shark action rather than wondering about his hairline. For his long-running role on NCIS, Los Angeles, L. Cool J has maintained a consistent look that works for his character, Sam Hanna. The hair looks professional enough for a federal agent, but casual enough for someone who spends time doing undercover work. It's a careful balance that requires some artificial assistance. What's interesting about LL Cool J is how he's used his natural baldness as part of his persona in some contexts, while using hairpieces in others. When he's performing music or making public appearances, he often goes with his natural look. But when he's acting, he's willing to use whatever hair situation works best for the character. 13. Morris Chestnut.
So I would tell most people to communicate, because sometimes you're together for a long time. Communication is key. You don't want to have,
It's just an easy thing to do, but a hard thing to do.
Morris Chestnut has been one of Hollywood's most consistently handsome leading men, and part of maintaining that status has involved some strategic hair assistance over the years. The man who made hearts flutter in Boys in the Hood has kept his romantic leading man appeal with some help from hair units. In movies like The Best Man and The Best Man Holiday, Chestnut's hair always looks perfectly styled and appropriate for his successful professional characters. Whether he's playing a doctor, lawyer, or businessman, his hair contributes to that overall polished, successful look that makes him believable as someone women would fight over. Chestnut has been particularly good at maintaining consistency in his appearance across decades of filmmaking. In Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, his hair looked action hero appropriate. Years later in Think Like a Man, it still looked leading man perfect, but age appropriate for someone in their 40s. What makes Chestnut's approach work is his attention to detail. His hairpieces never look obvious or artificial. They're always styled in ways that look like something he might naturally grow and maintain. The colors match perfectly, and the hairlines look completely natural. In The Perfect Guy, Chestnut played a character who was supposed to be attractive, but also slightly menacing. His hair in that role looked perfect enough to be appealing, but not so perfect that it seemed unrealistic. It's that kind of subtle balance that shows real skill in hair selection and styling. 14. Don Cheadle.
Are you Tony Stank?
Yes, this is Tony Stank. You're in the right place. Thank you for that.
Don Cheadle is one of those actors who can disappear into any role, and his strategic use of wigs and hair units has been part of that transformation ability. From playing War Machine in the Marvel movies to dramatic roles, Cheadle has used hair as another tool in his acting toolkit. In Hotel Rwanda, Cheadle's hair looked completely appropriate for a hotel manager in 1990s Rwanda. The style was professional, but not too styled, fitting perfectly with his character's position and the serious nature of the story. That kind of authentic look doesn't happen by accident. When Cheadle took over the role of James Rhodes in the Iron Man movies, his hair had to look consistent with a military officer who also moves in high-tech circles. The hairpiece work was so seamless that fans barely noticed the transition from the previous actor, focusing instead on his performance. In Crash, Cheadle played a detective, and his hair looked exactly like what you'd expect from someone in law enforcement. Not too flashy, not too perfect, but neat and professional. It's that attention to character-appropriate details that makes Cheadle such a convincing actor. Cheadle has been particularly smart about using different hair looks to signal different aspects of his characters' personalities. In comedic roles, his hair might look more relaxed and casual. In serious dramatic parts, it looks more controlled and professional. What's impressive about Cheadle is how he's never let hair considerations limit his role choices. Whether he's playing historical figures, modern characters, or even voicing animated characters, he finds ways to make the hair work for the character rather than limiting himself based on his natural hair situation. 15. Charles Stanley Dutton. Charles Stanley Dutton usually rocks the bald look, but when he has needed hair for specific roles, he has proven that he can wear a wig like a pro. The former convict turned respected actor has never let hair considerations stand in the way of his powerful performances. In the TV series Arok, where Dutton played a garbage collector trying to keep his family together, he wore hair pieces that looked completely natural and working-class appropriate. The hair never looked too perfect or styled, fitting perfectly with his character's blue-collar lifestyle. Dutton's approach to wearing wigs has always been about serving the character rather than vanity. When he played historical figures or characters from specific time periods, he wore whatever hair was necessary to make the portrayal authentic, regardless of how different it was from his natural look. In Menace: The Second Society, Dutton's hair looked appropriate for his character's age and social status. He was playing someone who had lived a hard life, and his hair reflected that experience without looking artificial or distracting from his intense performance. What makes Dutton's wig work effective is his commitment to the entire character transformation. He doesn't just put on a hairpiece and call it a day. He embodies the character completely, making the hair feel like a natural part of whoever he's portraying. Dutton has also been smart about when to use hairpieces and when to embrace his natural bald look. He's comfortable with both options and chooses based on what works best for each specific role, showing a level of professionalism that many actors could learn from. 16. Terrence Howard.
So you mean tell me, with all the sticking and moving that you've done, you don't think that me has ever tippy-toed out the door on you once?
Terrence Howard has used hair systems strategically throughout his career, particularly during his leading man phase when Hollywood expected its romantic leads to have full heads of hair. The man who crooned, "It's hard out here for a pimp," in Hustle and Flow, has navigated his own hair challenges with style. In Crash, Howard's hair looked perfect for his successful television director character. The style was professional and polished, fitting with someone who worked in the entertainment industry and had the income to maintain a perfect appearance. The hairpiece work was so convincing that it just looked like good jeans and regular barber visits. During his time in the Iron Man franchise, Howard's hair had to look appropriate for a military officer who also moved in high-tech circles. The style was conservative enough for someone with a military background, but modern enough for someone working with cutting-edge technology. Howard has been particularly good at choosing hair systems that match his facial structure and age. He has never gone for anything too young or flashy, instead opting for styles that enhance his natural good looks without looking obvious or artificial. In Empire, Howard's hair looked perfect for a music industry mogul. The style was stylish and contemporary, fitting with someone who would be conscious of his image and have the resources to maintain a perfect appearance. It added to his character's credibility as someone who had made it big in the music business. What's interesting about Howard is how he has used hair as part of his overall image management. He understands that appearance matters in Hollywood, and he's been willing to invest in looking the part for whatever role he's playing. 17. Forrest Whitaker.
I'm gonna have to be paid the same as a white help, or I'm gonna have to move on.
I guess you'll be moving on then.
Forrest Whitaker has worn wigs and hairpieces for various characters throughout his diverse career, always choosing styles that serve the story rather than his personal vanity. The Oscar winner who transformed into Idi Amin for The Last King of Scotland knows that sometimes the right hair can make or break a character. In Bird, where Whitaker played jazz legend Charlie Parker, his hair looked period appropriate for the 1940s and 1950s jazz scene. The style was authentic to the era and the character, helping transport audiences back to that time period. That kind of attention to historical detail is what makes Whitaker such a respected actor. When Whitaker played a ruthless dictator in The Last King of Scotland, his hair was part of the overall transformation that made him unrecognizable. The hairpiece work, combined with his physical transformation, helped him disappear completely into the role of Idi Amin. In Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai, Whitaker's hair looked appropriate for his mysterious assassin character. The style was understated and practical, fitting with someone who needed to blend into the background while carrying out his missions. Whitaker has been particularly skilled at using hair to help define his character's social and economic status. When he's playing working-class characters, his hair looks realistic for someone with limited resources. When he's playing more affluent characters, the hair looks appropriately well-maintained. He doesn't just put on a wig. He becomes the character completely, making every aspect of his appearance feel authentic and purposeful. 18. Richard Roundtree.
Is that all?
Oh, they had heat on him. The one in the funky plaid coat had his hands in his coat pocket.
Richard Roundtree, the original Shaft, wore hairpieces later in his career to maintain his iconic cool factor. The man who made Who's the Cat That Won't Cop Out When There's Danger All About? A cultural phenomenon wasn't about to let hair loss mess with his legendary status. During the height of his Shaft fame in the 1970s, Roundtree's natural hair was perfect for the role of the smooth private detective. But as he aged and continued playing the character in sequels and reboots, he used hairpieces to maintain that iconic Shaft look that fans expected. In Shaft's Big Score and other sequels, Roundtree's hair looked just as good as it had in the original film. The continuity was important for the character, and the hairpiece work was so well done that audiences could focus on his cool detective work rather than noticing any changes in his appearance. Roundtree was smart about adapting his hair choices as he moved into different types of roles. When he played more serious dramatic parts, his hair looked more subdued and age-appropriate. When he was channeling Shaft, the hair had that signature style that made him instantly recognizable. In the 2000 Shaft reboot with Samuel Leroy Jackson, Roundtree appeared as the original Shaft, and his hair looked great next to the younger actor. The hairpiece work helped maintain the illusion that this was the same cool cat from the 1970s, just a little older and wiser. 19. Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes has used wigs and hair systems for various roles throughout his action-packed career, always choosing styles that fit his character's needs rather than his personal preferences. The man who fought vampires in the Blade trilogy knows that sometimes the right hair can make you look even more badass. In Demolition Man, Snipes wore a distinctive blonde hairpiece that was perfect for his futuristic criminal character. The wild style fit with the over-the-top nature of the film and helped make his villain more memorable and visually striking. It was a bold choice that worked perfectly for the character. During the Blade movies, Snipes' hair looked perfect for a half-vampire vampire hunter. The style was sleek and modern, fitting with someone who moved through both the human and vampire worlds. The hair added to his overall cool factor and helped make Blade an iconic character. In White Men Can't Jump, Snipes' hair looked natural and appropriate for a street-smart basketball hustler. The style was casual but still looked good enough for someone who needed to maintain his reputation on the courts. When he's playing criminals or anti-heroes, his hair might look edgier and more rebellious. When he's playing more sympathetic characters, the hair looks more conventional and approachable. 20. Chris Rock.
That's right. The bigger the beard, the more leg room you get. They don't even have tickets. They just stamp your hand like you at a club.
Chris Rock has reportedly used hairpieces during some of his acting periods to maintain a youthful look, which is pretty ironic considering he made a whole documentary about black hair called Good Hair. The man who joked about everything has kept some of his own hair secrets while making us laugh about everyone else's. In movies like Head of State, where Rock played a presidential candidate, his hair looked polished and presidential. The style was conservative enough for someone running for the highest office in the land, but still looked natural and age-appropriate for his character. During his time on Everybody Hates Chris, where he narrated his own childhood experiences, Rock's hair in promotional materials and appearances looked consistently good. Whether he was doing interviews or appearing at events related to the show, his hair always looked camera-ready. In The Longest Yard remake, Rock's hair fit perfectly with his character as a prison inmate who becomes part of the football team. The style was casual and realistic for someone in that situation, but it still looked good enough for a leading comedic role. Rock has been careful about balancing his natural look with the demands of his entertainment career. Sometimes he embraces his natural hair situation, especially in his stand-up specials, where authenticity is important. Other times, he uses hair pieces when the role or situation calls for it. And you know what's interesting about Rock? It's how his openness about other people's hair choices contrasts with his discretion about his own hair situation. He has made careers analyzing other people's appearance choices while keeping his own hair business relatively private, which shows a level of professional savvy that goes beyond just being funny.